Welcome to the first video on economic growth. In this short video, I will answer the question why we need growth and how growth occurs. Why is it important? Well, do you like to see your income increase over your lifetime? Do you hope your children will have a better life than you do? Do you hope for new cancer treatments to be invented? And a full shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy, perhaps? If you answer yes to just one of these questions, you must be interested in the why and how of economic growth. The following 4 videos will go much deeper into the possibilities, the constraints and the limitations of economic growth, each from a different theoretical perspective. But first, the why and how. Economic growth is measured as the annual increase in GDP, the gross domestic product. But this is just a measure. The question is, why do we need economic growth? Well, economic growth helps to solve 3 problems: population growth, distributional conflict, and poverty. Population growth means that an increasing number of needs and wants for people's livelihoods and lifestyles need to be satisfied by the economy. The problem becomes even more urgent when the population distribution is biased in favor of a large group of children or elderly. This means that a relatively small group of people of working age should do all the income earning, both for themselves and for the rest of the population. We can measure this with the dependency ratio. The sum of those under 15 years and over 64 years old divided by those between 15 and 64 years. The higher the ratio, the heavier the burden on the working age population to earn an income for everybody in the economy. If those under 15 make up 25% of the population and those over 64 make up 20% of the population, those of working age need to earn an income for themselves plus for the other 45% of the population. But with economic growth, incomes increase, so the burden becomes a little bit lighter. The second problem that economic growth addresses is distribution conflict. Let's imagine total income of a country as a pie. Then an important question is, who gets which piece of the pie, right? And for those who are not satisfied, the question soon becomes how they can get a bigger piece of the pie. When the size of the pie remains the same every year, everybody will fight for a bigger piece at the cost of others. This is what we call a distribution conflict, having to divide a limited amount of resources over a population. But when the pie grows, as is the case with economic growth, everybody can get a bigger piece than before, and there is no more need to fight over it. Isn't that a neat solution? Economic growth as a conflict solver. The third problem that economic growth is an answer to is poverty. Poverty is an even more urgent problem when there is not also population growth and the number of poor people is growing. For poverty reduction, the incomes of the poor should increase faster than those of the rest, unless poverty can be solved with redistribution only, but that's very unlikely. Economic growth for poverty reduction is also referred to as pro-poor growth. With population growth added to poverty, GDP growth must be bigger than population growth, so that there will be a net average growth per capita. In an equation, GDP per capita growth is the difference between GDP growth, say 3%, and population growth, say 2%. Hence, it's 1% in this example. But if GDP growth is 0 and population growth is 1, then a country becomes poorer by 1% every year in terms of GDP per capita. You may not be entirely convinced that we need economic growth to solve these 3 problems. Indeed, there are alternative views. These range from those who say we should stop population growth to those who say we should distribute income much more equally rather than have income growth mainly of the richest people. And of course, economic growth has negative consequences as well, such as pollution and environmental destruction. These issues will be discussed later this week, where we go deeper into poverty, well-being and the natural environment. Here we move on to the more practical question of how economic growth occurs. The simple answer to the how of economic growth is look at the growth equation. Remember that economic growth is the increase in GDP, and remember that the symbol for GDP is Y. For growth in Y, we use the symbol G or simply delta Y for a change in Y. The growth equation shows how growth is technically generated. It shows that Y increases as a function of 3 variables. The first 2 are standard, the 2 key resources in an economy, capital K and labor L. With more machines and computers and with more workers and better educated professionals, the economy grows faster. But there is a third variable determining growth. We call it X. Growth is the percentage change in Y between T1 and T0, written as YT1 minus YT0 divided by YT0. The right-hand side of the equation indicates that this growth is a function f of K and L and X. So back to the mysterious X factor. Depending on the economic theory, X is sought in something social, or something moral, or perhaps something else, not yet discovered. But every theory has some idea about what it is. And we will see in the next videos of this week what this is. We will discover more about the mystery of the X factor.